All right, thank you for joining us. If you're watching this right now and you haven't watched the first video on Brody Brazil's YouTube channel that we've already recorded, go listen to that, then come back here because this is the second part of the conversation. We're doing a little channel synergy here. So go watch that if you haven't. If you have, thank you for watching and stick with us right now.
What a collaboration, by the way. We have to address this in case this is the first video people come across. We didn't plan the color or the shirt combos here. This is totally out of luck, if luck is the word.
Yes.
But we have been planning this conversation for a while. I'm happy to do it with you, man. And yeah, let's grow your YouTube channel a bit here. You've got a very important topic that you center around.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And this is a reason, the same colored shirts, et cetera, why there used to be signs at our old work when we worked together that it was a picture of Brody and it was a picture of me.
With our names
and it said, I think it said like, get to know your average looking white guy, I think, because nobody could tell us apart.
Easily confused. We are that plain.
And then we all like the same stuff and we're good friends. So it's kind of funny. I want to take it this direction with this video first.
Okay.
I have one huge fear about Howard Terminal getting done. I'm wondering if you have the same huge fear. What is your biggest concern right now that you think may be the reason this thing never gets built?
Biggest concern right now. I think the obvious thing people might read from me would be that there's not a development agreement between the A's and the city of Oakland. That definitely, I mean, it's primary thing number one. We can't go any farther until there is that agreement and then hopefully a vote on that agreement. But there's also the fact that infrastructure needs to be paid for. And the way that the city wanted to do it was to have federal grants come in. They wanted to take some of the money from the IFD, which is, again, let's be very clear here, tax money only generated by the project. It's not additional taxes to Oaklanders. It's none of that. It's how the project is going to essentially pay for itself and pay the A's back for the initial loan that they would give the city. But now kind of the problem is that the city said, well, we want to do this a different way. We want to do this so that we're going to accept grants. We're going to take in money from external places. You're relying on other people to give you tens and hundreds of millions of dollars, and that hasn't happened yet. So that's definitely a concern, I would have to say right now.
Yeah, I'm right on the same page with you there. And to your last point, you know, maybe these grant funds do come in, right? Like there's the mega projects grant. It's a huge one. Pete Buttigieg was just here. The mayor had a chance to talk to him. She's mentioned this. She told me to Kamala Harris, like the second she got off the plane on the tarmac, she's bringing this up with Kamala. And these are very important people, by the way, in the federal government. If you're going to get federal funds, I think those two probably have almost
prominent.
The most say. Yeah.
Very prominent.
As prominent as it gets.
Yeah.
So while I think the federal funds will come, the federal government isn't really operating on a timeline that's considering Howard Terminal.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Like they're doing their own thing. They got $5 billion in this mega projects grant, and they're taking applications from everywhere in the nation.
Right.
And so they're not looking at Howard Terminal and going, we need to give this to them within a month because they need to get a binding vote done. And they have this maybe $200 million gap that needs to be filled. They're not thinking like that. So that is a concern. I think they'll get funds. I'm not sure how much funds they will get. I think it'll come. But I think that when I look at what's happening right now, there's so much noise, right? There's noise from opposition. There's noise from people that want this. There's noise from fans. There's noise from people that are confused. I think what's happening right now is what's not being said in a weird way, right? Like they're negotiating this deal. I'm not hearing anything about it. Are you?
No. Silent on all fronts for the details. For the overall big picture, the leaders of both sides, I would have to think the mayor is the leader of one side. I would have to think that Dave Kaval is leader of the other side. And I don't distrust what I hear in that things are going well, but I don't know how well and how fast and how close. You know, it's and for obvious reasons. Look, it's vague answers. Casey, if you and I were negotiating on something, we wouldn't be here doing a YouTube video live negotiating it. We wouldn't be negotiating for the press. Like we're talking about, you know, tens and hundreds of millions and billions of dollars here being negotiated. I mean, the project, the A's alone to build $1 billion stadium, like they want to make sure that if we're going to sink $1 billion at least into this, we want to make sure that this is going to go okay. So I totally understand why, I'm not expecting to hear every last detail. Can I just go back to one other thing real quick?
Yeah.
The
go ahead.
federal grant money. Here's another thing about it. And it's a huge positive that Oakland could put itself in this conversation, right? Because to your point, these projects are taking place across the country. This is like getting a college scholarship. I mean, they're awarded to a large group of people, but nothing is ever assured that you'll be the one winning it or awarded it, I should say. But the real thing here is that it paints also a picture that the project is taking on public money. And in a way, I mean, I guess that is public money, but it's to pay for infrastructure, not the ballpark. And it's also money that was going to go somewhere, right? It's already been earmarked for projects.
It's going somewhere.
I mean,
$5 billion is.
if Oakland doesn't get it for Howard Terminal and the Port of Oakland, it'll go to the Port of Los Angeles. It'll go to Washington. It'll go to Baltimore. It'll go to Miami. My point is that this is money that is out there for the taking. And so is it public money? Yes, it's federal public money that it's already going to get dispersed. Why not go grab some of that free money, essentially?
And a very key point is this grant is for, transportation infrastructure.
Right.
It's at ports,
right?
Like specifically for ports and transportation infrastructure around ports. Creating a non-at-grade rail crossing is one of the things mentioned in there. So when people say, whoa, homelessness is a huge problem here.
Right.
We got all these other issues in Oakland.
This money
why
wasn't.
are we
This money was
applying
not
for this?
Right.
For that when we need it for this. That's not how it works.
Right.
This money is specifically for ports and freight and things of that nature. Freeways, it has nothing to do with the rest of the city. You can't apply for this grant for the rest of the city. It doesn't exist for that. So, it's either you get it and it's great for the offsite infrastructure, or you don't get it and it goes to Seattle and you get $0. And it's not an option of using it to fix potholes all over a different part of the city. That's not what it's for. It's specifically for things that are near the port and the train tracks around the port and helping with the transit in those regions.
This is a scholarship. That's the best way to put it. You don't get scholarship money to go spend partying, or at least you're not supposed to, right? This money is for a very specific thing. You have to go put yourself out there to try and earn this, and you're lucky if you get it, and it was going to be awarded no matter what. Somebody said, I'm putting aside this money for things like this. So, and I'll call him only Mayor Pete because I'm scared to say Buttigieg.
It's Secretary
sorry.
Pete now, Brody.
I'm sorry.
Respect. He's been bumped up considerably from mayor.
I'm sorry.
He's the transportation secretary.
We go back. We just go back to that age. Yeah. No.
Yeah.
I hear that. I hear his last name all the time. Still intimidated to say it. So
Secretary Pete Buttigieg.
There we go.
You're our guy. Save the offsite infrastructure gap. Now back to the infrastructure gap. I think it's a really good thing we're not hearing any details about the negotiation, because I will tell you, around July 20th, when things were not going so well between the city and Oakland, not this year, but last year, remember the big showdown over the dueling term sheets?
Right.
I was hearing things. Things from people. And they were usually pertaining to massive gaps in the proposals. Now, the reason I was hearing things then is because I think people felt like they were being wronged in the process, and they wanted it to get out there to create a little bit of rage and maybe bump somebody back in line with the deal. And the fact that I'm hearing nothing right now, no matter how hard I try, leads me to believe that things are actually going pretty well in these negotiations.
A couple things I think were going on back then. Number one, the A's had to do so much legwork to even get this in front of the city council. And I know the type of offense people took to Dave Cavill's tweet from Las Vegas, and that was, kind of a first statement about, well, this, here we are. I get it. I understand the resentment, the initial resentment towards that. When you look at it, though, I mean, the A's did what they had to do eventually. It wasn't pretty, it wasn't easy, but the A's got in front of the city council. I don't know that the city council is taking up all that stuff like they did if it weren't for the A's at the beginning of last summer forcing the issue. And I'll also say this, the whole idea of proposing your own term sheet in retrospect and voting on it is kind of, I mean,
It was a ballsy move.
It's kind of like it's dirty, you know. Like it's like, Casey, you want to go out to dinner tonight? You're like, do you want to go have Mexican? Okay, we'll pick a restaurant, and then literally I'm driving you there, and it's like, well, we're actually going to go to Italian, and you said you wanted dinner, and that's good enough, so I've already approved it. See you later.
But here's what was happening. Say you want to take me to an Italian dinner, but I may or may not end up having to pay for it, and you want to go to the most expensive place.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And so it's like, whoa, we don't want that money coming out of our general fund.
Right.
And so they made a different deal that protected their
Right.
general fund.
Right.
Because let's be honest, it doesn't matter what the A's were proposing. If the deal was going to put Oakland's general fund at risk, the city council is never going to pass it.
Right.
So what the city staff did was they came up with a term sheet that they
protected them
knew
better.
the city council
Yeah.
could possibly pass.
Yeah.
Because if they went with the other one,
Right.
I don't think it ever would have passed. We aren't sitting here right now talking about a
Right.
potential mega binding vote on a development agreement and community benefits agreement, because they'll slap it on the table. The city council will go, no, not happening.
Well,
So they reworked it. And what I thought was really interesting was, right up until that day, I was talking to Dave Cabell, and he's saying if they don't agree to our terms, it's a no vote. And the city's like, we're going to try anyways. And what was interesting was the A's didn't walk away from the table after that. They said, okay, this isn't so bad. And the reason they said it wasn't so bad is because part of the new term sheet was the city was going to handle the offsite infrastructure.
right.
Now we're hearing the city doesn't have enough money to handle the offsite infrastructure. And that is the major hangup on the entire deal.
Yeah, it's definitely that. It's the offsite money that they are working on acquiring. And it's also, to your point, just the straight up negotiations on the development agreement. And you know what? In part, I mean, maybe we're talking about them separately. Maybe on the very inside of this, maybe those two things right now are very connected. I'll also say this. I would rather sacrifice, we talk about September 20th as a date, not a deadline, not a hard deadline, but an interesting one, a soft deadline. I would rather them come to something that's a lot more agreeable and a lot more ironclad, even if it took an extra month, right? I would rather have that than to just sloppily come out with something on the 20th that's got a bunch of holes in it that all of a sudden, brings up more questions and more, confusion and delay. I'd rather, kind of like the EIR. It took a little bit longer, but in the end, that thing has stood the test of time so far and challenges so far. So to your point earlier, it's not the worst thing in the world that we're not hearing every last detail. It's probably a good thing. And in the end, it's a great thing to have a better agreement in place, one that can be adequately voted on and passed, than to have something flimsy. So.
Exactly. If there are holes, the city council will find them and they will vote no.
Yes.
And this thing is dead. So it's got to be correct.
Well, two people right now would probably vote no, regardless of how good it is.
Either way.
Yeah.
However, what I think is if they can get a deal on the table, maybe by October, they get a vote in by December, that would be good news for all involved. There are two solutions. Let's talk solutions really quick. Let's say there is a $200 million gap. And let's just say the mega project grant may or may not come. If it does, it might not come in time for them to have to vote on this thing before the end of the year. What are the solutions? And, one of the interesting things I heard early on was that they had enough money to cover the offsite infrastructure already. Now we're hearing there's a $200 million gap.
Yeah.
And I think the reason we're hearing that is because there is one option on the city side and potentially an option on the A's side. The city side option would be you create a limited obligation bond, which would not be like the general obligation bond on the Raiders deal, which was a disaster. The limited obligation bond wouldn't hurt or tax the taxpayers at all. But that bond would be able to bridge the gap, and maybe then you can offset that bond by the grants that keep rolling in. Because keep in mind, let's say they get a positive vote in December, they're still not going to break ground on this thing for another year and a half. It's going to take probably another 3 years after that to build it. So they actually have a lot of time to continue to raise money to offset any limited obligation bond spending. And two would be, if this is a $12 billion development, I've actually heard it's $6 billion, but $12 billion is the projected value.
I agree. It's less than 12, yeah.
It costs $6 billion to build this. Let's just say that's what it costs, the whole project on site. Are you really walking away from a $6 billion development over $200 million if you're John Fisher? That's a tiny portion of the whole project. So maybe, just maybe, and I'm sure they're not going to want to do this, but maybe they say, okay, we'll front you the $200 million. You pay us back with interest when you get these grants and other things rolling in, and then the A's are the backstop. Being the backstop is exactly what the city council keeps asking for in all these meetings. What do you think of that?
It's like asking your parents for a bigger allowance, and maybe sometimes does it work? Sometimes, maybe.
Yeah.
Do I feel like the A's need to be obligated to fix everything and pay for everything up front and worry that they're not going to get? I mean, look, I think, as much as they get, they get criticized for how much they spend, what they spend on, when they do. And I'm not here to defend everything they've ever done. I'm certainly not. But I'm just saying that they're literally offering to front a huge sum of money, not just to build the ballpark, but to also fix up the area, give it everything it needs to support the ballpark, and just say, well, pay us back over a certain period of time. And Oakland's like, we're not even sure we can pay you back. So again, I do see that as a possibility. Yes, I agree with you that if you're that close and $200 million is the thing that pushes you over the edge, and then the A's would have to have backstops in that to say, okay, we will front this $250, something like that. We'll front this so long as we make sure that you pay us back eventually. You know what I'm saying? So in a way, the A's would be a backstop on one thing, and the city of Oakland would be a backstop on making sure that what the A's front eventually gets paid back. They want to make sure
the county's participation
and
too.
The county's in it too, and maybe that's an untapped resource. You talk about options and being creative here. Maybe the county of Alameda is also an option. They've been so silent on this. Maybe we should dive into that. They've been so silent on this, and I'm only seeing it as they don't want to get into it until they have to. That being said, I think they feel generally favorable about it, so long as the BCDC's in, City of Oakland's in, A's are in. Why would they not be in? I would be shocked if they had a huge opposition to this.
Yeah, I like this theme. The theme of this one is what we're not hearing and why that could be a good thing. We're not hearing much from the county. The last time the county met on this, they had an independent financial analysis come in, and it was paid for by the A's.
That's right.
But that person wasn't able to say anything because they didn't have the terms. So we're still waiting on the terms.
Right.
So we're not hearing anything from the county, and I think that's a good thing because the county's just like, it's not our deal. We'll jump in if it benefits us. So you guys figure it all out, and then we'll see how it goes. So we're not hearing anything from the county for that reason. One thing I'm not hearing also, Brody, dead silent on the Vegas front.
I also think, though, that that's for a reason, and that's because they might be getting closer to negotiating a purchase. I'm not saying making the purchase. Why would it go silent? One of two reasons. You're getting close to something, or you're getting close to nothing. And again, this is me and you completely speculating because we're not invited on these trips and we're not invited on these Zoom and conference calls. I'm thinking in reality, they're not doing nothing down there. So I would have to estimate that if they're working as hard as they are here in Las Vegas,
which the indications are there.
They are. Yeah. I mean, that they're probably getting close to making an arrangement on land. Again, I'm not saying that they're purchasing it tomorrow. I'm not saying, but maybe having an offer in place or a deal negotiated that they're yet to execute, but maybe a deal that, has a negotiating window. Maybe that's where they're at, and maybe that's why it's been silent.
Yeah, and here's how I see it. I think that is absolutely possible. But remember, they were also supposed to do their finalist for the sites right after the World Series, which never came. And it's been quite a while since. So what I think is maybe they are making progress there. But if you have 2 sites, 3 sites, 4 sites, 5 sites, you have 0 sites. You have no sites. You have nothing. And so one thing I think may be happening there is things are going well enough here in Oakland that they don't want to shake things up. Vegas was the big shakeup. It really, really was the catalyst for change. And I think it did work if you look at everything that's happened since.
Yeah.
But what it also did was backfired in a major way from a public relations standpoint. I mean, people are all over them, especially when they mention Vegas. It hits them a way that I don't think they quite anticipated getting hit reputation-wise. So in my theory is if things weren't going as well as they are here, then you'd be getting some renderings dropped and you'd be getting a whole lot more updates from the Las Vegas side.
Do you think renderings already exist for Las Vegas? I've seen the ones that people do on their own, right? The Photoshop.
Yeah, not those ones.
No. I'm saying like, the beautiful Howard Terminal, Bjarke Ingels Group, caliber renderings. I think those probably exist for Las Vegas, right? I think the
I think
A's
they
at
do.
some point have hired somebody to say, hypothetically, like, and they're internal for a reason, right? It's almost like celebrating a job you don't have yet, or celebrating a lottery ticket that is not won for you yet. You don't want to get ahead of yourself. Why would you ever publish that until you really, had something that you could act on? But I do feel like some designs and some renderings do exist because they're probably sharing them with people in Las Vegas,
But if you have them and you're not sharing them publicly, I think it's because they don't want to upset the card in Oakland. And again,
or Las Vegas. They don't want to upset in Las Vegas.
But I'm going to preface this in one way. Renderings, if they do drop, are not the nuclear bomb that people are going to perceive them to be on Twitter. We've seen renderings in Fremont, in San Jose, in a whole bunch of different ones in Oakland, and nothing ever got built. So renderings don't mean something is imminent. That is just
wait. I'm the rendering king. I make a video every time new renderings come out of Howard Terminal. I live off renderings.
Yes, they're nice to look at, but they don't mean something is actually getting built.
Okay, but that's you and I saying that. The average person who is not following the storylines here, the progress here, as soon as they see a rendering, it's like seeing the Easter Bunny mangled or something. It's going to.
It's a strange way to put it.
I freaked out, but you know what I'm saying? It's going to be so like, oh my gosh, this is happening. This is the. And people aren't going to read the story. They're not even going to read the headline. They're just going to look at the picture and instantly assume Coliseum's done, Oakland's done, A's are done here, this is over. So I agree with you that renderings mean only a certain thing, but to some people, they mean literally everything. They'll take it too far. So
And that's why we're talking about that. I'm warning the people.
We're tempering a little bit. They could
see the renderings. Don't panic.
They could come out, and they do mean something. Like, what that means to me is that we feel comfortable and confident enough in our workings down there. We're not going to upset anybody by saying, "Hey, here's what we've been talking about." I mean, that's a big deal if they do come out. To your point, it doesn't mean it's everything in the deal. I mean, heck, I saw Tampa Bay Giants logo in the early 90s, and that never happened. I remember I pulled this video the other day. It was yours truly. You might have been working on the show downstairs. I was on camera saying that the arena deal in Sacramento is dead. Mayor Kevin Johnson says there are irreconcilable differences between the city of Sacramento and the team, and the Kings are basically gone.
And I remember Grant Napier crying on the air on the Kings broadcast. The Kings are dead. They're gone.
And here we are. They've been in their new home for a handful of years. So it just, again, I don't think you want to go down these difficult paths to get to the good spot. But yeah, again, this could happen. The Vegas stuff, the renderings could happen. I don't know if it's going to mean something. It's not going to mean everything. And there will be overreaction guaranteed.
So we're wearing similar shirts. We look similar. we make similar points. We like the same stuff. We're friends.
We're basically saying the same things too.
What you just did was segue beautifully to the very last thing I wanted to bring up in this video.
Ooh.
All right? Because we just talked about renderings and why we're not seeing them perhaps, and why if we do see them, it's not the end of the world. Here's the last thing I want to bring up. I think that before a development agreement and community benefit agreement get signed, I think we could see the deal fall apart first and both sides walk away, just like what happened in Sacramento. I could see them saying,
wait a second. Whoa.
Yeah.
This is a heck of a way to end this video. Wait a second. You're saying, I feel like we've been doing this. You're saying this is going to happen?
And I'm saying when it does, that is also not the end of the world, because that is what happens
Casey,
in a
I'll
negotiation.
lose my lunch over that one. Come on. How's that?
But
Explain
that's
that.
what happens in a negotiation, right? Have you ever bought a car? I go to a car dealership, right?
Are you a haggler?
I haggle with the salesman. I get their best final offer. I say no. I leave. I give them my phone number. I go to a nearby establishment. I have a beer, and I just sit and wait for my phone to ring. And when the phone rings, they call back and they go, all right, here's a better deal. And then I go, all right, I'm on my way.
Actually, you double-fisted it.
Negotiate. That is how you negotiate.
Okay.
And so what I think could happen is both sides could put down what they are perceiving to be their best and final offer. I could see them both walking away, making a whole big hullabaloo about it. It'll get leaked to us. Everyone will panic. But things come together very quickly at the last minute in a negotiation. And I could see this happening, and it'll be a big affront, and then they will come together one last time. Best final, do or die. This thing happens or it doesn't happen. Viva Las Vegas or Howard Terminal, and they get it done.
What about the whole issue of time in the background, right? Like time is ticking on it.
Time is a big part of that.
What you're suggesting is that like weeks could go by where they don't talk, or
I don't think it'll be weeks. I think it'll be days, if not maybe a week. I think that if this thing falls apart and comes back together, it'll happen kind of quick because they know what they have here. They have a certified EIR. They have lawsuits basically cleared. There will be challenges, obviously. They have the BCDC giving them the land use. They have everything they need. It's right there for them. This deal is theirs for the taking, and I don't think they're going to let it slip through their fingers. But I think there could be a come to Jesus moment, so to speak. And that's the last warning I want to give people watching this video. Renderings may seem like a bad thing with Vegas, but I don't think it's the end. And I think if this deal does fall apart, I don't think it's the end of that either, at least in the short term. So those are the things I'm trying to warn the viewers about. This is the end game, Brody. We're talking about the World Series. It's going to get bumpy, man. It's never that easy. It's never that easy, but you got to overcome those challenges.
Here's my last comment for you. If you have nothing further, I'd like to close it out with this.
You go ahead.
I'm so discombobulated right now. I think that Oakland has to, and the city council members and Mayor Schaaf, they have to do their absolute best in this to, number one, like you said before, make sure that the A's are the financial backstop, and that's what they want to do, and that's how they feel responsible, right? So that this is only a win for Oakland. It could not be a loss because they've taken a handful of L's before, and they're trying to permanently avoid that. But at the same respect, I hope Oakland can understand what a 3-run homer means in the 6th inning and giving you a lead and ultimately giving you a win, as opposed to somebody sitting there on the council, and they don't know baseball, but I'm going to use this reference. They need to have a walk-off grand slam in the bottom of the 14th. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is a very good deal. Is it going to fix everything in Oakland? That's impossible to ask. It's also impossible to project. Between housing, between the neighborhoods, I don't want to under or oversell it at all, but it's going to do a lot. I don't think that's in any question. The biggest thing is to understand the difference between perfection and something that is really, really good and you should absolutely not pass up on. And so I just hope that in the negotiations, you know what the A's are going to want to do as a private entity, but I hope that Oakland can represent its constituents in getting them something great, but it doesn't have to be 1,000% perfect, flawless. It does not have to be flawless. So,
yeah, I think both sides maybe are going to have to learn how to settle for a win.
Fair enough.
Can you settle for a win? Right, I guess you can.
Doesn't have to be a walk-off, right? Take a W. Simple as that.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's wrap it up here. Brody, this was awesome. We'll do it more. We text all the time about doing this, and then months go by before we actually end up doing it. So we'll try to do it more frequently and share it amongst our channels. Good
collab, and congratulations on growing your channel. Finally, you're doing it. Finally.
Well, I should say this before we sign off. I was making more videos, and then I started construction on my bathroom, which is right next to my office, which was so loud I couldn't record any more videos. And it's almost done. It's almost done. So there will be more. There will be more videos.
It's looking good, and thank you for having me on.
Yeah.